Marcus Thorne, a stoic millionaire forged in the crucibles of corporate warfare and a past he never spoke of, returned from a 3-month merger only to be paralyzed by the sight of his own daughter huddled in a stark, empty room, clutching a tattered doll as if it were a life raft. The rest of the sprawling mansion gleamed with an impersonal, magazine-cover perfection, a cold testament to the impeccable taste of his fiancée, Isabella. But this small, forgotten room felt like a wound. Why would a child be caged like an animal in her own mother's house? And who truly deserves to be brought into the light? The silence of the house was the first thing that struck him. It was never truly silent before. When his late wife, Elena, was alive, it had been filled with the music of life, Lily's laughter, the scent of baking, the soft murmur of conversation. Now, under Isabella's care, it had the sterile quiet of a museum. Polished marble floors reflected the cold, gray light of the November afternoon, and the air was thick with the cloying scent of lemon polish and something else, something metallic and unsettling, like fear. He had been gone for 94 days, a necessity to close a deal that would secure their family's future for generations. He'd received daily updates from Isabella, glowing reports filled with photos of a smiling Lily, engaged in painting, reading, and playing in the manicured gardens. The photos showed a happy child. The house told a different story. He found her on the 3rd floor, in a room that was once a guest suite. The heavy oak door was slightly ajar. Inside, the furniture was gone, replaced by a single, thin mattress on the floor. The walls were bare, scrubbed clean of any personality. And there, in the corner, sat 6-year-old Lily. Her knees were drawn to her chest, her small frame made even smaller by the cavernous emptiness around her. Her vibrant red dress, one he'd sent from Paris, was rumpled and stained. In her arms, she held Rosie, a simple ragdoll Elena had made, its yarn hair frayed, one button eye missing. Lily wasn't crying. Her silence was far worse. She just rocked back and forth, a tiny, rhythmic motion of self-soothing, her gaze fixed on the door as if expecting a monster. When her eyes met his, there was no spark of recognition, no joyful cry of "Daddy." There was only a flicker of terror, quickly masked by a profound, soul-deep weariness that had no place on a child's face. He stopped, his heart clenched. Something wasn't right. He took a step forward, and she flinched, hugging Rosie tighter. That single, reflexive movement broke through his shock and ignited a cold, protective rage that settled deep in his bones. In that moment, standing on the threshold of that barren room, Marcus Thorne made a quiet, unbreakable vow. He would find the source of the shadow in his daughter's eyes, and he would extinguish it. He knelt, careful not to make any sudden moves, his large frame seeming to shrink to appear less threatening. "Lily Bug," he whispered, the old pet name feeling foreign in this cold, empty space. Daddy's home, her only response was to turn her face away, burying it in the doll's worn fabric body. The smell of antiseptic was stronger here. He looked around the room again, his gaze sharpening, the mind that could dissect a hostile takeover now cataloging every damning detail. The lack of toys, the single plastic plate and cup near the mattress, the heavy, new-looking lock on the outside of the door. This wasn't a bedroom, it was a cell. He heard the soft, expensive click of heels on the marble floor of the hallway. Isabella appeared in the doorway, a vision of curated elegance in a cream-colored cashmere dress. Her smile was bright, practiced, and utterly false. "Marcus, darling, you're home early." I was just about to prepare Lily's afternoon snack. Her eyes flickered to the scene, taking in his stony expression and Lily's cowering form. The smile didn't falter. It was a mask of reinforced steel. "What is this, Isabella?" His voice was low, deceptively calm, but it held the brittle edge of shattering control. "Why is my daughter in an empty room?" Isabella's laughter was a light, tinkling sound that grated on his nerves. She glided into the room, a predator feigning maternal grace. "Oh, this, Dr. Albright's new method. It's a quiet space Lily has been having, well, some rather extreme tantrums lately. The specialist said she gets overstimulated." This is to help her self-regulate. It's all very therapeutic, darling. State-of-the-art child psychology. She reached down to touch Lily's hair, and Marcus saw his daughter shrink away from the touch, a movement so subtle it would be invisible to anyone not looking for it. Isabella's hand hovered for a moment before she gracefully retracted it, her expression shifting to one of pained maternal concern. See? She's still in a mood. It takes a little while for her to come down from one of her episodes. The lie was so smooth, so plausible, delivered with such practiced sincerity that a lesser man might have believed it. She had an answer for everything, an expert for every cruelty. But Marcus had spent his life reading people, finding the cracks in their facades. He looked from Isabella's perfectly composed face to Lily's terrified silence. He saw the faint, yellowish bruise hidden just below her hairline. He saw the way her knuckles were white from gripping the doll. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the core, that he was looking at a monster. An episode, he repeated, the words tasting like ash. What kind of episode requires a lock on the outside of the door? Isabella's smile finally tightened at the edges. A safety precaution, Marcus, to ensure she doesn't hurt herself when she's thrashing about. The doctor approved it. I have the paperwork in my office if you'd like to see it. She was challenging him, daring him to question her authority, her perfect care. He held her gaze, a silent declaration of war passing between them. He would play her game for now. For Lily, he scooped his daughter into his arms. She was lighter than he remembered, fragile as a bird. She didn't resist, but she didn't cling to him either. She remained a stiff, silent weight, her face still hidden against the doll. "Show me the paperwork," he said, his voice flat and final as he carried his daughter out of her prison. The next few days were a tense, cold war fought in the silent halls of the mansion. Marcus moved Lily back into her old room, a space filled with soft pastel colors, stuffed animals, and books. It felt like a shrine to a child who no longer existed. Lily moved through it like a ghost, her silence an accusation that echoed louder than any scream. She ate little, slept fitfully, and never let go of Rosie the doll. Isabella was a constant, smiling presence, her solicitude a suffocating blanket. She prepared Lily's favorite meals, which the child wouldn't touch. She suggested fun outings, which the child met with a blank stare. To any outsider, Isabella was the image of a patient, loving stepmother-to-be, struggling with a difficult child. "It's the trauma of losing her mother, Marcus," she'd say, her voice dripping with counterfeit sympathy. "These things manifest in complex ways. We must be patient." She produced the promised paperwork, a letter from a Dr. Albright on expensive letterhead, detailing a radical but effective therapy for childhood defiance. A quick search by Marcus's assistant revealed Dr. Albright was a real, respected child psychologist. The letter, however, was a masterful forgery. Marcus knew it instinctively. He just had to prove it. His investigation began with Lily. He didn't push her to speak. Instead, he simply existed in her space, a quiet, constant presence. He would sit on the floor of her room for hours, reading aloud from her favorite fairy tales, his voice a low, steady rumble. He built elaborate castles with her blocks, knowing she wouldn't join in, but wanting her to see him there, trying. His breakthrough, if it could be called that, came through the doll. One afternoon, as he sat near her, he noticed her whispering to Rosie, her tiny voice a barely audible murmur. He couldn't make out the words, but the doll was her confidant, the sole keeper of her secrets. He started speaking to the doll, too. "Rosie looks sad today," he'd say gently. "I wonder if she's missing the sunshine." Lily's head would tilt, a flicker of interest in her vacant eyes. He bought a new button and, with his large, clumsy fingers, carefully sewed it on to replace Rosie's missing eye. As he finished, Lily's small hand reached out and touched his, just for a second. It was the first voluntary physical contact she'd initiated since his return. Felt like a dam breaking. That evening, he was putting her to bed when she spoke her first words to him. Her voice was a tiny, rusty thing. "She doesn't like Rosie." Marcus's heart ached. Who doesn't, Lily bug? Lily hugged the doll tighter, her eyes wide with a fear that was chillingly adult. The new mommy. She said Rosie is dirty. She tried to put her in the fire. The image was so horrific, so monstrous, that Marcus had to close his eyes for a moment to contain the fury that surged through him. He pictured Isabella's perfect smile, her manicured hands, and imagined them throwing this precious, tattered piece of Lily's mother into the fireplace. He opened his eyes and looked at his daughter. I won't let anyone hurt Rosie, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And I won't let anyone hurt you. Ever again that night, after Lily finally fell into a restless sleep, Marcus began to search. He knew Isabella was meticulous, careful to erase any evidence of her cruelty. But people like her always had a small pocket of arrogance where they believed they were untouchable. He started in Lily's old room, the empty cell on the 3rd floor. The room was sterile, but he ran his hands along the baseboards, searching for anything out of place. Tucked deep beneath a loose floorboard near the corner where Lily had been huddled, his fingers brushed against a small stack of folded papers. He pulled them out. They were drawings. Lily's drawings. The paper was cheap, torn from a notepad, not the expensive art supplies Isabella so proudly displayed downstairs. There were 6 drawings in total, rendered in the simple, stark crayon figures of a small child. They told a story more horrifying than any verbal testimony. The first drawing showed a smiling stick figure with long, black hair, labeled Bella, holding hands with a smaller figure labeled Me. They were standing in front of their large house, under a smiling sun. The second drawing was similar, but Bella's smile was now a jagged, angry line. She was pointing a finger at a brown figure in the little girl's hands. The doll, Rosie. In the third drawing, Bella's figure was larger, looming over the small girl. Her hands were reaching for the doll. The little girl's face had a round O for a mouth, a silent scream. The fourth drawing was a close-up of the doll, its button eye scratched out with angry black crayon. The fifth showed the little girl figure alone, crying, in a black, scribbled box. The final drawing was the most chilling. The little girl was inside a box with bars drawn over it. Outside the box stood the looming figure of Bella, holding a large, shiny key. Her smile had returned, but it was a terrifying, triumphant slash of red crayon. This was it. This was Lily's voice. This was the truth, rendered in wax and paper. This was the evidence that would burn Isabella's world to the ground. He carefully folded the drawings and placed them in the inside pocket of his jacket, the paper feeling both as fragile as a butterfly's wing and as heavy as a slab of granite. The next morning, Marcus made a call. Not to the police, not yet. Isabella was wealthy, connected, and a master manipulator. She would twist the story, paint him as a grieving, unstable father and Lily as a disturbed child. He needed more than a child's drawings. He needed an ironclad strategy. He called David Chun, an old friend from a life Marcus had left behind long ago. They had served together in a special operations unit where trust was the only currency that mattered. David now ran one of the most successful private security and investigation firms in the country. "I need you, Dave," Marcus said, his voice devoid of its usual corporate polish. "It's about my daughter." An hour later, David was in Marcus's home office, the door securely locked. David, a man whose compact frame belied a formidable presence, looked at the drawings spread across the mahogany desk. He listened without interruption as Marcus recounted everything. The cold house, the empty room, Isabella's slick lies, Lily's silence. David's expression remained impassive, but his eyes, dark and intelligent, missed nothing. When Marcus finished, David picked up the final drawing of Lily in the cage. "She's smart," David said, his voice a low gravel. "This isn't just a drawing. It's a narrative. It's sequential. It shows intent and action. Prosecutor would love this, but you're right. It's not enough on its own. Isabella will bring in her own team of experts to say these are fantasies of a troubled mind." "So what do we do?" Marcus asked. "We corroborate," David said, his focus absolute. "We find someone who saw something, a neighbor, A delivery person. The nanny she fired right after you left on your trip. He tapped a finger on his tablet, his movements precise and efficient. I've already pulled public records. A Mrs. Eleanor Gable lives next door. 72 years old, widow. Long-range photos show she spends most of her day in her garden, which has a clear line of sight to your backyard and the third-floor windows. Marcus remembered Mrs. Gable, a sweet, quiet woman who had always been kind to Elena. Isabella said she was a nosy old woman. Nosy is good for us, David replied. But she might be scared. People like Isabella are experts at intimidation. You should approach her, not me. You're a neighbor. A concerned father. Marcus nodded, a plan solidifying. While David began digging into Isabella's past, searching for other victims, other lies, Marcus would try to talk to the reluctant witness. He found Mrs. Gable tending to her prize-winning roses. She seemed nervous when he approached, her friendly demeanor strained. "Mr. Thorne, how lovely to see you home," she said, not quite meeting his eye. "It's good to be home, Eleanor," he said, using her first name to build a connection. "I wanted to ask you about Lily. I've been away, and she seems different." Mrs. Gable's hands stilled over a rosebush. She glanced nervously back at Marcus's house, as if Isabella herself might materialize. "She's a quiet little thing," she said evasively. "Stays inside a lot now." Marcus softened his voice. "Eleanor, I know you see things. You're out here every day. I'm worried about my daughter. Isabella says she's been having behavioral problems. But I don't believe her. I need to know what you've seen." The old woman's face crumpled with a mixture of fear and guilt. Tears welled in her eyes. "That woman, she's not what she seems," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I hear things. Shouting. Not from the little one, from her. And I see Lily. Sometimes she's made to stand in the garden for hours, even when it's cold. No coat. Just standing there, not moving. Once I saw her, that woman, snatch her little doll and hold it over the barbecue grill. Lily was screaming. Not with her voice. Just, her whole body was a scream. I wanted to call someone, but Ms. Vance. She came over the next day. She told me it would be a shame if my property taxes were suddenly reassessed. She knows people, Mr. Thorne. Powerful people. The confession tumbled out. A flood of pent-up anxiety. She had seen the cruelty. She had been silenced by fear. "You don't have to be afraid anymore, Eleanor," Marcus said, his voice a firm promise. "Will you be willing to tell the authorities what you saw? I will protect you." She looked at him, searching his face, and saw not a millionaire or a powerful executive, but a father desperate to save his child. She nodded slowly. "For that sweet little girl," she said. "Yes." While Marcus secured his witness, David's team was ruthlessly efficient. They found the nanny Isabella had fired, a young woman now working 2 jobs to make ends meet. She told a story of Isabella's escalating cruelty, of rules that changed daily, of punishments that bordered on torture. Isabella had fired her under threat of blacklisting her from every childcare agency in the state if she ever spoke a word. David's team also uncovered Isabella's past. She had a sealed juvenile record and a history of targeting wealthy, widowed or divorced men with children, a pattern of charm, manipulation, and isolation. The final piece of the puzzle, the smoking gun, was digital. David's cyberforensics expert managed to recover files from a cloud account Isabella thought she had deleted. It contained the original draft of the letter from Dr. Albright. More damningly, it also contained a short video clip. The video was shot from Isabella's phone. It showed Lily, crying silently, reaching for her doll, Rosie. Isabella's voice, saccharine and cruel, could be heard off camera. "Do you want Rosie? Beg for her. Say please, Mommy Isabella. I'll be a good girl. Use your words." Lily just sobbed, unable to speak. The video ended with Isabella laughing, a sound so devoid of humanity it made Marcus's blood run cold. They now had it all. The child's testimony through her drawings, the reluctant witness, the fired nanny, a history of predatory behavior, and the antagonist's own confession on video. The trap was set. All they needed was the right venue to spring it. Isabella, oblivious to the storm gathering around her, was busy planning her masterpiece of public deception. The annual fundraising gala for the Children's Hope Foundation, which she was hosting at their mansion. It was her coronation, the event that would solidify her position in society as a philanthropist, a community leader, and the perfect partner for Marcus Thorne. She moved through the preparations with an air of supreme confidence, her cruelty hidden behind a mask of charitable grace. She even tried to leverage Lily as a prop. "We should have Lily present the check on stage," she suggested to Marcus one evening, her eyes gleaming with the thought of the photo opportunities. It would be so touching, a child giving back to other children. The suggestion was so grotesque, so profoundly twisted, that Marcus had to walk away to keep from physically reacting. He simply said, "No, she's not ready for that." Isabella's face clouded over for a second, a flash of annoyance. "You're coddling her, Marcus. She needs to face the world." This was her countermove, her attempt to reassert control. She saw his quiet protectiveness as weakness, his investigation as mere paternal anxiety. She had no idea she was orchestrating her own downfall. David's advice was simple and brutal. Let her build the stage. The higher she climbs, the harder she'll fall. The night of the gala arrived. The mansion was transformed. Crystal glasses clinked. A string quartet played softly, and hundreds of the city's elite mingled, sipping champagne and admiring the opulence. Isabella was radiant, the queen of her court, accepting compliments on her generosity and her beautiful home. She stood at a podium at the front of the grand ballroom, a warm, benevolent smile on her face, as she prepared to give the keynote address. Marcus stood at the back of the room, a silent, imposing figure in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. David was nearby, disguised as a member of the catering staff, a small earpiece his only giveaway. Mrs. Gable was waiting in a quiet room upstairs, accompanied by a plainclothes detective David had brought in, a trusted contact on the force. Everything was in place. Isabella began her speech, her voice resonating with practiced emotion. "There is no cause more noble," she said, her hand on her heart, "than protecting the innocence of a child. As the future stepmother to a precious little girl myself, I know that our first and most sacred duty is to provide a safe, loving, and nurturing environment." That was his cue. Marcus began to walk forward, his steps slow, deliberate, and utterly silent on the thick Persian rugs. A path cleared before him as people turned to look, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. The confident cadence of Isabella's speech faltered as she saw him approaching the stage. A flicker of confusion, then irritation, crossed her face. "Marcus, darling," she said into the microphone, her voice a little too bright. "I'm in the middle of my remarks." He didn't stop until he was standing beside her at the podium. He took the microphone from its stand. The room fell into a stunned silence. "I apologize for the interruption," Marcus said, his voice calm and clear, amplified throughout the cavernous room. "But my fiancé just spoke about the sacred duty of protecting a child, and I felt it was the perfect moment to share a story about what that really means." Isabella tried to grab his arm, her smile now a brittle, painted-on thing. "Marcus, this isn't the time or the place." He gently but firmly moved her hand away. "This," he said, looking out at the sea of confused faces, "is the only time and the only place on a massive screen behind the podium, where a looping video of smiling children had been playing. A new image appeared. It was Lily's first drawing, the happy family in front of the house. A collective murmur went through the crowd. "This is a story told by my 6-year-old daughter, Lily," Marcus said. "She calls this one the beginning." He clicked a small remote in his hand. The next image appeared, Bella's angry face, pointing at the doll. "This is the new mommy gets mad." Isabella's face went pale. "Marcus, stop this. This is insane. She's a child. She makes things up." The crowd was whispering now, their phones emerging to record the bizarre scene. The third drawing flashed on the screen, the looming figure of Bella reaching for the doll. "This is called She Tries to Take Rosie," he continued, clicking through the slides. His voice a steady, damning narration for each of Lily's crayon masterpieces. The scratched-out eye, the little girl crying in a black box. And then, the final, devastating image. The child in the cage, with a smiling Bella holding the key. And this one, Marcus's voice dropped, thick with a rage that was all the more terrifying for its control. This one is called The Quiet Room. Gasps rippled through the audience. All eyes were now on Isabella, who stood frozen, her mask of composure shattering into a million pieces. "He's lying!" she shrieked, snatching for the microphone. "His daughter is disturbed. She's a troubled, difficult child. I was only trying to help her, but it was too late." Her polished facade had cracked, revealing the raw, ugly panic beneath. As if on cue, a side door opened and Mrs. Gable walked in, flanked by the detective. She walked to a second microphone that David had discreetly set up. "My name is Eleanor Gable. I am their next-door neighbor," she said, her voice shaking but clear. I saw her lock that child in that room. I saw her torment that little girl, threatening to burn her only toy, the doll her mother made for her. The final blow came not from an image, but from a sound. David, from his position, hit play. Isabella's own voice filled the ballroom, piped through the expensive sound system. "Do you want Rosie? Beg for her. Say, please, Mommy Isabella, I'll be a good girl." The sound of Lily's desperate, silent sobs echoed through the hall, followed by Isabella's cruel, triumphant laugh. That laugh, so utterly devoid of warmth or humanity, hung in the air like a poison. It was the sound of pure evil. There was no defense against it. It was the truth. Isabella stared at the shocked faces of the people whose approval she had so desperately craved. Her perfect world had been dismantled in less than 5 minutes. She let out a guttural scream of pure rage and lunged at Marcus, her nails bared like claws. The detective stepped forward smoothly, catching her arms and restraining her. "Isabella Vance," the detective said, his voice calm but authoritative. "You are under arrest for child endangerment and abuse." As they led her away, a pathetic, screaming mess of ruined cashmere and shattered pride, the last vestiges of her public persona dissolved, exposing the hollow, cruel creature she truly was. The crowd stood in silent, horrified witness to the fall, the swift and righteous justice a stunning end to the evening's festivities. The months that followed were a quiet, steady process of rebuilding. Isabella's trial was swift. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, the drawings, the video, the testimony from Mrs. Gable and the former nanny, she was convicted and sentenced to the maximum term allowed by law. Her name became a symbol of socialite disgrace. Her fall from grace a cautionary tale whispered at the very galas she once commanded. But for Marcus, justice was not about her punishment. It was about Lily's recovery. He sold the mansion, that cold monument to his own blindness, and bought a modest, sun-drenched cottage by the sea. The house had a small garden for them to tend and large windows that let in the salty air and the sound of the waves. There were no locked doors. Here there were no secrets. They spent their days walking on the beach, collecting shells and reading stories. Marcus learned to bake, filling their small home with the warm smells of chocolate chip cookies and fresh bread, chasing away the last ghosts of lemon polish and fear. Lily began to heal, the process slow and delicate. Her silence gradually gave way to whispers, then to short sentences, and finally, to the clear, bright sound of a child's laughter as she chased seagulls on the sand. The transformation was not in a single dramatic moment, but in 1,000 small, quiet ones. It was in the way she started holding his hand without prompting. It was in the way she finally put Rosie the doll down on her bed at night, trusting that she would still be there in the morning. One evening, as the sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Marcus was sitting on the porch, watching Lily draw at a small wooden table. She was using a new set of vibrant, colorful markers. When she finished, she brought the drawing to him. It was a picture of 2 stick figures, a large one and a small one, standing in front of their seaside cottage. They were holding hands. Above them was a huge, smiling sun, and in the little girl's free hand, she had drawn a small, brown doll with two perfect button eyes. She pointed to the large figure. "Daddy," she said, her voice clear and strong. Then she pointed to the small one. "Lily." Then she leaned in and gave him a hug, her small arms wrapping tightly around his neck. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered into his ear. Marcus Thorne, the man who could command boardrooms and dismantle empires, held his daughter and felt a sense of peace so profound it was like coming home for the very first time. He had faced down corporate raiders and hidden enemies, but he knew in that moment that true strength wasn't found in a boardroom or on a battlefield. It was found in the quiet, unwavering promise to protect a child's heart. In the end, we see that the most insidious evils are often those that wear a mask of civility and grace. They hide not in the shadows, but in plain sight, cloaked in expensive clothes and charitable donations. Cruelty does not always scream. Sometimes it whispers, it gaslights, and it smiles for the cameras. But the truth, no matter how small or silent, has a voice of its own. It speaks through a child's drawing, in a neighbor's guilty conscience, in the unwavering resolve of a protector who refuses to look away. True strength is not the power to dominate, but the courage to defend the vulnerable. It is the quiet goodness that methodically, patiently, and relentlessly brings the darkness into the light. How many silent victims are waiting for a protector to listen not to their words, but to their silence? And what does it say about us when we choose to believe a beautiful lie over a difficult truth? I hope this story has moved you. If you have ever witnessed an act of quiet courage or have a story about the power of speaking up for someone who cannot, please share it in the comments below. Your stories give us all hope. Thank you for reading, and may you always have the strength to be a voice for the voiceless.